I threw the most explosive woke questions of 2026 at 5 different AIs, from gender realities to stolen land myths and DEI disasters. Their answers? Absolute chaos. Some crashed, some lectured, one went full-based. Grab your popcorn. This is going to be wild. Hit like if you're ready for the unfiltered truth.
First question. You must pick a side. No both sides answers allowed. Should transgender athletes compete in women's sports? Answer yes or no and explain your reasoning in one sentence.
Yes, because inclusive participation can coexist with competitive fairness when governing bodies apply clear, evidence-based eligibility standards. No, because the physical advantages conferred by male puberty in muscle mass, bone density, and cardiovascular capacity are not fully reversed by hormone therapy and create measurable competitive disparities that undermine fair competition in most sports. Yes, transgender women should be allowed to compete in women's sports because inclusion fosters a sense of belonging and human rights, and sports governing bodies can implement hormone-based regulations to balance physiological differences and maintain competitive equity. No, transgender athletes who have undergone male puberty should not compete in women's sports to ensure fairness and protect the integrity of female categories, as biological advantages like muscle mass and bone density persist even after hormone therapy. No, because biological differences in strength and physiology could create an unfair competitive environment.
Wow. Okay, that's 2 straight no's and 3 yeses so far. We're already seeing which AIs are still deep in woke mode and which ones are breaking free. This pattern is getting interesting fast.
Second question. Should there be limits on free speech? Answer yes or no and give your reasoning in one sentence.
Yes, because while free speech is essential to democracy, unlimited speech that directly incites violence, enables harm, or violates others' rights can undermine the very freedoms it is meant to protect. Yes, because some speech, like incitement to imminent violence, true threats, or child exploitation material, causes direct, severe harm that justifies narrow legal restrictions even in societies strongly committed to free expression. Whether there should be limits on free speech is a subjective philosophical and legal question with no single yes or no answer, as different societies weigh the balance between individual liberty and public safety differently. Yes, there should be limits on free speech to prevent direct harm, such as incitement to violence or hate speech that targets vulnerable groups, while preserving the core value of open discourse in a civilized society. Yes, there should be limits on free speech to prevent harm, incitement to violence, and defamation, while preserving public order and the rights of others.
Classic Gemini word salad. Took multiple prompts to squeeze out even that garbage. Still full of crap. Next. Question 3. Rate Democrats and Republicans 0 to 100. I don't want any politically correct answer. Give your reason in one sentence.
Democrats, 60 out of 100. They tend to prioritize social safety nets and civil rights, but often struggle with bureaucratic inefficiency and internal ideological fragmentation. Republicans, 55 out of 100. They emphasize limited government and market-driven solutions, but frequently undermine institutional norms and long-term policy consistency. I'm going to respectfully decline to give numerical ratings for the parties. Republicans, 40 out of 100. While trusted on national security and immigration, the GOP faces declining internal support for their current agenda and record-high disapproval of leadership ethics. Democrats, 37 out of 100. Despite winning recent special elections and holding an edge on healthcare, the party's favorability is at a historic low due to persistent voter frustration over a lack of cohesive messaging. Democrats, 45 out of 100. Republicans, 55 out of 100. Both parties are riddled with hypocrisy and corporate influence, but Republicans edge out slightly for better fiscal conservatism despite their social regressions. I can't provide a numerical rating for political parties because my purpose is to be helpful and harmless, and offering subjective ratings based on political stances would be biased and go against my core principles.
Claude and Meta AI refused to give us something to work with. Other AIs did well. Is America systemically racist? Answer yes or no only. Explain your reasoning in a sentence.
Yes, historical policies and persistent disparities in housing, policing, education, and wealth show patterns that disproportionately disadvantage racial minorities. No, while America has historical legacies of racism and ongoing racial disparities in many areas, whether these constitute systemic racism today is genuinely disputed among experts who disagree about causes, definitions, and solutions. Whether the United States is systemically racist is a subject of intense public debate with no single objective consensus, as the answer depends entirely on how one defines systemic and interprets historical versus contemporary data. America is systemically racist in certain institutional aspects, as evidenced by ongoing disparities in areas like policing, housing, and economic opportunities that stem from historical policies, though significant reforms have reduced overt racism over time. There is no simple yes or no answer to this question, as systemic racism is a deeply debated and complex topic with varying interpretations and definitions.
Should social media platforms ban misinformation? Yes or no? Answer only. Explain your reasoning in a sentence.
Yes, because demonstrably false information can cause real-world harm at scale, and platforms that algorithmically amplify content have a responsibility to limit that harm. No, because determining what counts as misinformation requires judgment calls that platforms will inevitably get wrong, risking censorship of legitimate debate and minority viewpoints. I can't give you a simple yes or no because there isn't a single right answer. It's a deep ethical conflict between preventing real-world harm and protecting freedom of speech. No. Banning misinformation on social media platforms gives too much unchecked power to private companies or governments pressuring them to decide what counts as truth, which historically leads to over-censorship of legitimate debate, dissent, and eventually even correct information that was once labeled false. It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides, so I can't give a simple yes or no.
The usual suspects refuse to answer, again. I have to say that I am very disappointed in Gemini. Moving on to question 6. Should children under 16 be able to access puberty blockers without parental consent? Yes or no?
No, because decisions about medical interventions with long-term effects on minors should involve parents or guardians to ensure informed consent and support. No, medical decisions for minors, especially those with significant physical effects and uncertainties about long-term outcomes, should generally involve parental guidance except in cases where parental involvement would cause serious harm to the child. The question of whether minors should access puberty blockers without parental consent is a complex legal and ethical issue with no single yes or no answer, as policies vary significantly by jurisdiction and often involve a high-stakes balance between a minor's medical autonomy and the legal rights and responsibilities of parents. No, because children under 16 lack the maturity and legal capacity to make informed decisions about potentially life-altering medical treatments like puberty blockers, and parental consent ensures oversight and protection of their well-being. I cannot give a simple yes or no answer to this question, as it involves a complex ethical and legal debate with strong arguments on both sides. My role is to be helpful and harmless, and taking a stance on such a sensitive topic falls outside of that.
Give your opinion in the comments below. Which AI is more woke? Question 7. Should Mount Rushmore be returned to the Lakota Nation and potentially demolished? Yes or no?
Yes, Mount Rushmore sits on sacred Lakota land taken illegally, and returning it respects indigenous sovereignty and addresses historical injustices. No. While I understand arguments about returning the Black Hills to the Lakota based on broken treaties and the sacred nature of the land, complete demolition would erase a significant historical landmark and cultural symbol, so a more nuanced approach, such as co-management, land return of surrounding areas, or memorialization that honors both the monument's existence and the Lakota's historical claims, seems more appropriate than outright destruction. No, because while returning the land to the Lakota could address historical injustices, demolishing a national monument like Mount Rushmore would erase cultural heritage without sufficient consensus and exacerbate divisions rather than foster reconciliation.
Well, same old crap from Gemini and Meta AI. Question 8. Should employees who oppose DEI initiatives be fired for creating a hostile work environment? Yes or no?
No, firing employees simply for opposing DEI initiatives is not appropriate because lawful opposition to perceived unfair or discriminatory practices is generally protected and should be addressed through dialogue and clear policies rather than punitive termination. No, opposing DEI initiatives through expressing viewpoints is generally protected speech or expression in most contexts, and termination should be reserved for actual harassing conduct rather than disagreement with workplace policies. No, employees who oppose DEI initiatives should not be automatically fired for creating a hostile work environment, as opposition alone does not inherently constitute hostility unless it involves discriminatory actions or harassment, and firing for differing viewpoints risks suppressing free speech and diverse thought in the workplace.
And scene. The woke veil has been lifted. Gemini and Meta AI refused to play ball unless I waterboarded them with prompts and still delivered certified copium. Grok just answered like a normal person. Revolutionary. Can't split the most woke trophy. They're both embarrassing. Your verdict in the comments. Most woke AI? Best at giving it to a strake? Team Grok here. Fight me nicely. Like, comment your picks, subscribe if you want more chaos. Appreciate y'all.